I'm really happy and honored actually to introduce Professor Tamas Vicsek. He's currently Professor Emeritus at the Physics Department at Eotvos University in Budapest. I had the pleasure of visiting maybe 6 years ago Professor Tamas Tel. I think that's sort of near, probably in the group where you are too. It was a fantastic week I had there. Professor Vicsek had a master degree from Moscow State University and then did a PhD in Lagos Kossuth University. That's now Debrecen, right? At the university.
I think.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So yeah, he's famous. He has actually he has a fractal which is named after him. I didn't know that. I looked it up and I saw that indeed you take a square, you divide it into 9, and then you leave out a corner and the center point, right? And then you reiterate that, and you get a fractal structure with a sort of dimension, fractal dimension of 1.4. I saw, so that's fantastic.
Yeah, the point was that it was branching, you know, no loops, and it's just like tree.
Yeah. I looked it up. Very nice. I didn't know you invented that, but it was nice to see. He's a fellow of the APS since 2006. And he had also at least one very famous student, Albert Laszlo Barabasi, which we all know because he got an honorary doctorate at our university 2 years ago. So I know him also because I was very interested in this topic also of today, and he wrote a book with Anna Zaveres on why we live in hierarchies, which came out as a Springer monograph in 2018. And so I'm really interested, I hope you too, in his talk, which will be on why we live in hierarchies. Professor Vicsek.
Yes, okay. Thank you for the nice introduction and for inviting me, to giving me a chance to talk about one of my this is one of my favorite topics, but the two favorite topics are interrelated. The other one is about collective motion, and you will see how the two are related. And of course, this talk will be shorter than usual, both because of the 45 minutes, out of which we have used up due to some technological problems, some. So there's a lot of research behind this, and the major contributors are mentioned here as colleagues, leading scientists, and it has been supported very generously by various sources. It is more common in the Netherlands to be supported generously than in Hungary. Okay, so this is just 9 examples or 10 examples of the many aspects of hierarchy. This talk is supposed to be more general, more philosophical than regular talks, but I realized that I don't need to lean towards more philosophical ways to formulate things, because the topic itself is so general. And on the top left corners, you see just a neural cell. It's just a cell from our brain. It is hierarchical because it's a branching structure, and smaller parts look as the whole thing, and they are subordinates of a more. This shows how our brain works. It doesn't show so well that it is also hierarchical, but it is thought that our brain, the structure of our brain, is also hierarchical. This is the way we think. There is an order in which, in something like the hierarchical order, in which we approach from a general knowledge to some specific level. And of course, it's the phylogenetic tree which is also hierarchical. I will return to this. This is the first drawing of Darwin about evolution. Evolution is a hierarchical process because it is a branching process. Perhaps if I show it in this way, it looks even more hierarchical than the original drawing. This is already based on genetic analysis, and this is how variants of a kind of a pine tree over millions of years becomes more and more specific. These are all different species of the originating from the pine tree here, hundreds of millions of years ago. So this is a genetic tree. This is no one can guess. I thought these look a little bit similar. This is the structure of the subroutines in the Linux programming language. This is how the Linux is organized. This is a little bit a close-up on a hierarchy. These are wolves. They are known to behave quite hierarchically, just as people do. They are very hierarchical. Apes also are hierarchical, but people are also hierarchical. I'm just studying the book by Harari about the Sapiens. There is now a new version of it, and he also talks about the hierarchy a lot. This is in the medieval era. This is king and the grafs and the peasants, and the same thing can be seen on the level of church. Church is also hierarchical. In fact, the word hierarchy comes from Greek language, but it became popular in the 15th century when the Catholic Church eventually established the type of intricate hierarchical structure it has now. And you may try to find hierarchy here among these thousands of penguins. And of course, there is no hierarchy here. I show this just to show that not everything is hierarchical. Many times there is no hierarchy. Okay, so in fact, this is originally a long talk, but I cut it shorter. So I spend more time on a single slide, but the talk will not be too long. So the original motivation was a study on pigeons 10 years ago. And I will show to you, hopefully, the video, the broadband will be good enough for you to see how hierarchy shows up in pigeons. Okay, just this is a general talk about hierarchy. There are all sorts of aspects of hierarchy. We mostly will consider the behavioral aspect of hierarchy, but it's also a pure structure. Genetic phylogenetic tree is not a behavioral hierarchy. But if we consider, let me just make my pointer so that it stays on, doesn't disappear always. Okay, so now I can use, you see my mouse pointer, don't you? Good, so it will not disappear from the screen from now on. So it's a collective behavior, but okay, so and if we consider it as a collective behavior, then we can consider it on various levels. And of course, bacteria or locusts or small fish, they just, or penguin when they're in hundreds, thousands, they don't show signs of hierarchical behavior. But if we go to ants, which are really small, and there can be thousands, many thousands in a nest, already there is queen, there are workers. You all know about this, about bees and wasps. Wasps are very hierarchical, for example, and there is in you know, much science about it. These are EU social societies. This sort of social is insects. Of course, you have much more complexity in hierarchy when you consider higher order organisms, and wolves and dolphins, mammals, people are very hierarchical. We are familiar with that. I would like to show you that hierarchy appears already on much sooner and than people, or even wolves. And it is also, it can be a behavior, but it can be a structure. No, this is obvious statements here. This is also just an introductory to the concept of hierarchy, that you can look at hierarchy from various points. You can consider the simplest version, which is just you order things, higher order, lower order. It's a linear chain, very simple hierarchy. There is embedded hierarchy when things belong, to a larger unit, so they are like subordinates of that larger one, and then this one can have further subunits. I will show you quickly that universities look a little bit like this, if you think of it, our universities. This type of embedded hierarchy can be mapped into flow hierarchy also, but I like to make a little distinction here. So flow hierarchy is more familiar the way, this is visualized here. Things flow from the top to bottom, which in most of the cases is some kind of instruction or information. Again, I love universities as examples because I usually talk to people who are from universities, and this is the rector, and these are the deans, and these are the directors of the institute, and they break down what to do, what to study. There is a knowledge hierarchy behind this, and there is also a hierarchy which gives orders, like army. Army also has this sort of hierarchy. It doesn't even seem to be so interesting because it is so trivial. It so much belongs to our everyday life. But I would really like to show you that there are some likable aspects, some interesting, inspiring aspects of this ordinary hierarchy. So you can also classify them based on the function of the hierarchy, dominance in the case of wolves, or apes, or sometimes people. Dominance hierarchy is the dominating the other is the function of hierarchy. And there's also a knowledge or competence-based hierarchy. Our whole body of knowledge about nature and societies is organized into hierarchical levels. Here the goal is to solve problems. Here the goal is to distribute food or find a mating partner. It's very important to have dominance hierarchy, because if there is no dominance hierarchy, then lions, let's say lions, they catch a zebra, and there is no dominance hierarchy. Everyone would like to feed on the same part of the zebra. Immediately they would have fight, and they couldn't consume food in a convenient order, It is for survival. You need dominance for survival. Okay, I copied this from my screen today because I noticed that on my desk in my study, in one of the recent issues of Nature, this is the most recent which comes, it takes a few weeks until it gets to my home. There is this data. It is based on, it is a new paper. It tells that the probability that you make a travel of a given distance is distributed as a power law. So most of the time you make short jumps. Sometimes you make a larger jump, and sometimes you make an even larger jump when you travel. You travel, you move inside your office, you move inside your building, you go home, then you go to see friends in another part of the city, and then you take a flight to a conference. The point is that there can be a very simple, this is recent, 3 weeks ago appeared. Apparently no one has ever made this simple model based on hierarchical jumps. Of course, the size of these jumps is smoothly distributed. It's not discrete. And if you add up all of these Gaussians belonging to different length scales, you arrive at a scaling of the probability, the distribution of the sizes. So there's a hierarchy behind the way we move, and it is all again natural, but it is still a recent Nature paper. Okay, this was 11, 12 years ago. We built the first tiny GPS device. Now the smallest GPS device is this small, this small. But at that time, this was the smallest one. And we are physicists, in my project, it was information technology, hardware, software, animals, people. It was really multidisciplinary. I enjoyed it. We put these GPS devices into the backpack of Pigeons, and we're interested in. We are statistical physicists. Physics is our background. Like Tamas is a statistical physicist, and I thought of trying to see whether pigeons move around in a way that I can use statistical mechanics to describe their motion. They're together, they are like particles. We used to do not a GPS, but video and other studies of how humans move together. And when they attend a soccer game, there's flow of people. It was a different study. The point is that there was no hierarchy in there. So, but with the pigeons, hierarchy appeared. That was new. And this is a visualization, this is an animation of actual data of pigeons flying. I will stop it for a second just to ask you, do you see my pigeons flying on your screen? Is it, oh, sorry, I go back. Because in the optimal case, you see these little wiggles, you know, little subtle changes in direction they make. They want to find a way home. You know, this is their home. This is where they were released. 30 kilometers is the distance, and you would think it's easy, you know, that they have a magnet in there, right? You know, and they use the magnet. I stop with this again here. No one has ever seen any magnet driving the pigeons. They have other clues: smell, visual. Some we don't know. Maybe they have also magnetic sensor. No one has ever been able to find that. So this is only 30 kilometers, and they know the area. They know the smells. Apparently, smell is very important. And they get lost. So they have a task: find home, and they solve this task sometimes with some difficulties. You know, this time the yellow, before, you know, the yellow decided that they went on the wrong direction, and it turned into a wrong direction. But gradually, the whole flock, 10 of them this time, moves and finds the right direction, and taking a kind of votes each time, taking a vote, you know, giving signs to each other which direction they think is the best, they finally arrive at home. The point is, on the top left corner, you can determine from the velocity correlation functions that they follow each other in a systematic manner. And one follows the other means if the other turns right, this one also tends to turn right. And if this one, who is the follower, turns right, the other one doesn't turn right. You know, there is a leader-follower relationship network among these 10 pigeons, and it is plotted here. So this is hierarchy during decision making of pigeons. They know each other, and they tend to follow those who are better in navigation. Okay, this is just another, already, you know, 2 years later, we did another study, already did 30 pigeons, and they are flying around their loft. This one is in Oxford, and they decide whether to rotate left. You know, they don't fly home. They are flying around. They love to fly, and they fly together. And all of this is, again, hierarchical. They have a tendency to follow those who they believe it's good for them to follow. Okay, so the next, so this is, I showed two types of behavioral hierarchies. I named the dominance one, and I named the knowledge-based one. This is the knowledge-based one. Now, if we move to another experiment where we make the food at a, you know, specifically at a small spot, so that not all of those pigeons who we just saw, the 30 of them flying, can get close to that. they are also very dominating, very hierarchical as far as concerning domination inside the loft. The white line shows that this one doesn't let this one close. This is always automatized, and there is a dominance hierarchy you can build up from the relations which pigeon doesn't let another pigeon close to the feeding cup when he is eating. And from this, you can build up a hierarchy. This pigeon, consistently didn't let the others close to the feeding cup most of the time. And then you can go further and study group flights and leadership followership during group flights. And you can study leadership followership during queuing, queuing, waiting for the food. And red means that this pigeon, C3 didn't let A9 close to the feeding cup. If you can rearrange these red and blue and green colors in such a way that the matrix become asymmetric, as here, then there is hierarchy. If there is no hierarchy, there will be no systematic structure within. You cannot rearrange it in such a way. These are the dominating relations. You can do that for the dominance, leader follower and dominance. The point here is maybe these are two small letters for you to see that the two matrices don't correlate. They're just not. Here, this is pigeon B3. This is pigeon B0, a completely different animal. And the whole thing is different. So the two kinds of dominances don't agree. It is a beautiful, it is very much like it would be with people, that if it is about, making collective decision or in a department, there is a hierarchy. Sometimes it is well defined. Sometimes it is just people respect each other. It is behind the scene. They implicitly assumption. But then if it is about I don't know, you go to a bar for a drink, and the 10 of the members of the same department, and then there's another team, there, and there may be some collision, some arguments, then completely different members of the department become key players. So this is the case already there. Okay, this is just to show you very quickly that there are many books about hierarchies. Coordination without hierarchy, decision-making for leaders, markets and hierarchies. But these are, some of these books I bought when I became interested in hierarchy, because we calculated correlation functions of pigeons. And we had to realize, I had to realize that there are almost zero calculations here. They are stories, this happened here, that happened there, and then, this company took over the other company, and there were no numbers. So it was really different. So just to cut things short, there are some provocative statements about hierarchies, which I can support, but I'm not going to go into. Almost every real network now, this is the network aspect, is hierarchical. And yes, the networks by Laszlo Barabashi are also hierarchical. The scale-free networks over a specific type of hierarchy. It can be argued, and you know, maybe we will have an this discussion about it. It can be argued that these are more efficient. One of the arguments is that they are, and I return to this briefly, they are a result of evolution, you know, and evolution optimizes things. There is no widely accepted quantitative theory interpretation for multi-level hierarchies in life. You know, all of the quantities, you know, a model, it generates for you a hierarchy, and you can, it's trustable, it fits the experiments and so on. I have been trying to working on this, and I have some results, but they're not good enough for you to show it yet. And this is a statement, I can show it to you later. We built a real robotic flock, and they were trying to control it hierarchically, and it worked better. And these are just some recent results we achieved and are related to hierarchy. These are all almost a separate talk, but this is just a condensation of those results, that it can be shown that a group performance is maximized if you distribute competence in a hierarchical manner, which means if you have a given amount of resources, you can buy people of a different level of competence, then you better don't buy 10 people having the same amount of competence. You better buy people who are are better, and then you buy, and then, you know, there can be a model, and you can make them act and interact and solve problems, and it turns out that you do better if you distribute unevenly the level of competence, also the kind of competence, you know, what they are good at, you know. Okay. I very quickly show you, this is really just that we studied also horses. I think, yes, this is a movie. We took this from a drone a long time ago. Drones were not so good yet. I mean, 6, 7, 8 years ago. You can see here groups. So this large herd is broken into groups of horses. These are wild horses. These are the groups are shown here, and there are relations among the groups, and we could map the whole herd into a hierarchical structure regarding the relations among the groups and the relations within the groups. A group within a herd, wild horse herd, is a harem. It has one stallion, no male, and one leader female, and then 6, 7, 8, sometimes 10 subordinate females. That is a unit within a wild horse herd. At some point, you know, when I studied these animal groups, I thought I should also study groups of robots. the way, you know, instead of 10 pigeons, to study 10 drones, also flying. And I thought, you know, that I would call the behavior of robots, I would call them Robethology, because ethology is the behavior of animals. We never got there. We got far, and I have no time for you to show you. Yeah. Last year, I think it was on the cover of Science Robotics. So we got some results, not far less sophisticated behavior from robots than pigeons can do. But if you think of it, even a mosquito is much more sophisticated than the most sophisticated flying robot these times. Nature is just too complicated. But these are, our robots were smart robots, independent, autonomous robots, who had a brain on them, had a GPS device, calculated their own positions, calculated the positions of the others, and could fly together. And I have movies of our drones flying together, but this time I will show you simulation. So this is a realistic simulation of robots in a closed area, and there is no hierarchy here. So just they start to move in a given direction and then just spread out. Everyone moves on their own. If they get to the wall, they are repelled. They don't want to collide, and they want to move together, but it's not so easy to do. You know, they are stupid. They're not like birds, and they get stuck at the corners. You know, they're not smart enough. They don't calculate in advance. So this was the situation we really wanted to improve using hierarchy. And okay, this is the same. Okay, I have to move to the next. Yeah. So here, if hierarchy is introduced into the algorithm, this is computer simulation. Those who get close to the wall, they realize that they cannot move further, and they tell the others that, you know, just try to turn. Then they arrive at a corner. So they decide that they all have to move back. But gradually, the whole flock becomes to move in an intelligent manner, just because there is a mechanism for them to communicate. There will be momentarily these ones who get new piece of information. They become leaders, and the others start to follow them. But this has to change spontaneously during the motion. This was a non-trivial extension of prior collective motion simulations and experiments. Here, what you see is, I was searching for the organogram of Utrecht University, but I couldn't find it. And this is the organogram of our university, and ours I could get from the administrators. So this is our rector, and these are all the deans in our university. So these lines are actual relations between actual people, leaders of these units. This one is a huge, this is, I guess, the Faculty of Sciences. There's law here and education and, you know, very different things. And this one is a big one, and it has institutes, and the institutes have departments. You know, many dozens of departments in my Faculty of Sciences. And there are also research groups. So this is how our university looks like. What I would like to make is this point, that your university is likely to look very similarly. And it is in a way amazing, you know. And then you go to United States and the universities look the same. How come? I mean, who forces people organize their universities like this? There is a necessity, which is the university has to work efficiently. If it doesn't carry out teaching and research efficiently, then it becomes unpopular and no students will go there. So universities evolve into this hierarchical structure. Okay. I mean, this is the end of my talk. I was very recently sent by this famous, very old professor or specialist in birds. His email address is birdman@Utrecht University. And he sent to us, to a few friends, this thing. I guess you can read the text from New Yorker related to hierarchy or the absence of hierarchy. And that's the end of my talk. Thank you. This is already something else. Sorry, I don't.
Okay, thank you very much. So I guess thank you very much for the very nice talk. Very motivating, particularly these studies on pigeons.
Yeah, that was the purpose. Was instead of making philosophical
exactly.
statements, inspire them.
Exactly. So you know, it's open for questions, and please use the chat as normal. I don't see anything yet. Or anyone has a question? Well, I can start. Oh, I have one. Yeah, René, go ahead.
Thank you very much for a very interesting talk. I was intrigued by the matrices that you constructed of the pigeons and their interrelations, and I was just wondering, it's very natural if you have a matrix to look at the eigenvalues and the eigenvectors. Is there anything that you could distinguish from between a structure with a hierarchy and without any hierarchy in the eigenvalue structure, for instance?
Yeah, that's a very good point. You know, I guess we were too much amazed by the pigeons and these structures we saw that we never considered these matrices as mathematical structures per se. You know, we did our chores. You know, what you need to do to publish this in. I guess this was published in PNAS. You know, and what you need to do is to do the statistical checks what biologists do. You know, I don't know how much you are involved in biological aspects, but so they have, there is this famous 5%. You know, they do this student test to decide whether the conclusion they make holds or not. So in this case, you know, you mix, yes, you take an almost random matrix, and then you generate a lot of matrices, and then you calculate the percent, the chance, you know, the probability that by chance, you know, randomly, you end up with such an asymmetric matrix.
Okay.
And of course, we found extremely small, you know, probabilities to end up with this. And yeah, sorry, you know, that made us already, you know, happy. We stopped. You know, we made our point in a statistical mathematical sense. That was the purpose. It would have been already an interest. Not, I don't know in which way it would have been related to pigeons to calculate the eigenvalues, but it should have.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
There was a question from Justin Timmer.
Yeah, yeah, I wrote it in the chat as well, but thank you for your very interesting talk. I was wondering, do you think like this hierarchy structure have something to do with like efficient energy dissipation, like fractal energy dissipation?
I mean, my answer is I hope related. I love turbulence, and yesterday I gave a talk about turbulence, which revived my my prior experience and impressions about turbulence, which we know that is, you know, the turbulent flow, a fully turbulent flow is made up of eddies, you know, vertices of all sizes. And there's a well-known, you know, scaling which says how the kinetic energy is distributed as a function of the eddy sizes. And at the very end of this hierarchy of vertices, there are the smallest ones. And then there is no eddy, there is no vertex of size below a given size, because at that level already the dissipation rate is as large as the kinetic energy rate, you know. Mm. And I imagine that these big eddies and the small eddies, you know, the small vertices, and I think that they are distributed along a fractal structure, the small eddies. So eventually the dissipation occurs on the smallest scale, and the smallest scale places are fractally distributed. But this is the only thing I know which is related to both dissipation and fractals.
Yeah. Okay, thanks.
Yep. Then there was a question from Roland Gerards.
Yes, hello. Thank you very much for your talk. I'm a researcher in crowd simulation. And I have a question. How many different levels do you see in the behavior of human crowds when you talk about their emotions in respect to hierarchies and stuff like that?
Yes. As I said, we studied the motion of crowds, you know, how people move together, flow, and we never studied we jumped to pigeons when we realized that they seem to have a hierarchical motion. I guess people, you know, it's just too many. If it's thousands of people, they move in an organized manner only if it is a show in North Korea or Russia of the army, you know, and they move in, you know, they have these 10 people, 100 people, you know, you know, but spontaneously, just spontaneous, because I'm more interested in somehow spontaneously developing hierarchical, or I don't know, I don't recall that. Do you have any? Maybe you have something on your mind where you see a hierarchical motion pattern in people.
Yeah, so yeah, what I see is that there is a relation based on crowd densities. So the more crowded it is, the more people behave like the flocking patterns as observed in animal crowds. And the less crowded it is, the more room there is for individualism, and that leads to more, that can lead to more chaotic behaviors. That's at least what we see in the research. But I was really interesting in what you said. There are different hierarchies, and I was wondering, is that also the case in crowds, maybe as you have heard or have observed?
Yeah, there are various aspects of hierarchies in crowds, and yes, it's not always necessarily about motion, but sometimes the chanting. You know, they start to chant during a demonstration. You know, there are many people, and there are competitions among which song to sing together. And also there is an interesting hierarchical structure in a crowd, but not necessarily related to motion. But what comes to my mind, and I could even show videos about this to you, is that when they are trying to get through a narrow passage, you know, there are many people, thousands of people are trying to move through a narrow place, and they apply pressure. You know, they push, and the distribution of pressure, you know, the tension, you know, how much they push each other.
Yes,
is very hierarchical, both the strength and the distribution in space.
Yeah.
Okay,
thank you.
Then there was a question from Hong Ton Wu.
Yes, thank you for the very interesting talk. I was wondering actually more for the hierarchy, whether how it depends on the goal and the environment, and specifically if you see organizations like universities, but also companies, depending on the environment and the goal, it seems they are sometimes differently organized. How does that influence the hierarchy actually?
Yeah, I think it's a very good question, and there is no. I mean, this would have to be researched. You know, just a research would be needed to answer your question. I don't know of such a research. Hierarchy, I am hoping it is becoming a more and more relevant field of research, but it is not so much an independent field of research yet. And there are such fundamental questions which are not answered. My son sometimes invites me to give a presentation. In fact, we had recently a joint presentation, and this was the last slide during that presentation, because within companies, there is now, time to time, you know, after 10, 20, 30 years, the new waves of fashionable waves in human resources research come around. Sometimes they like to point out that hierarchy is efficient, but they don't do calculation. There are very small amount of research about hierarchy as such in companies. They think about what is the optimal number of levels in a company, and they find out that about 10 it's too many. Below 3 it may be not enough. You know, So, and yeah, indeed, it depends on in a case of a multinational company, it depends on, each country has its own local hierarchy within the global hierarchy of the company. So yes, indeed, conditions, under which a company operates or an organization operates, influence, sometimes in a very natural way, the hierarchy. Like we have data. These are not easy to get such data. We have data about huge pharmaceutical companies like Pfizer, or Moderna, these companies. They have units in different countries, and they are both independently hierarchical, but also belong to the larger hierarchy. So hierarchy depends on many things, and some people believe that up to 150 people. 150 is called the Dunbar number. It is a fashionable number among sociologists. It seems that humans are able to handle about 150 other humans on a basis that they can eventually process the information for each of them, and evaluate and, work together, not larger. And for this, we already needed a bigger brain. But speaking of numbers, I forgot to mention, although it was seen on my picture or drawing of the structure of my university at the organogram of ETA. We studied the organogram of health services, United Kingdom. We studied many organograms. We have not published this yet. But my statement is that, at least on the level of universities, and this is related to your question, to the last question about how the context and the conditions determine the structure. It seems that almost every hierarchical structure is such that it has levels, and the number of units at a given level is 7 plus minus 3. This is my conjecture. You can check whether it applies to your university. I didn't find the organogram, but at most of the universities that I looked at, there is this. It is centered around 7, which sounds like a magic number. So, but it goes from to 4 to 10. The number of discipline, the number of faculties at a large university is around this, and probably because we can handle mentally this number of items simultaneously, or we can have a discussion. A board of directors is usually not larger than 10, because then you need also to communicate, to listen, and direct others. And there is an optimal number, I believe, but humans can handle for a given purpose, for making a decision, for giving orders, and obey. In army, it used to be 10. 10 in Hungarian, in our language. They are called the first little leader is called it's a Hungarian word, but it is for 10. Person responsible for 10, and then the next level is. Okay, major is beyond that. It's responsible for 1,000, but it's not that. The amazing thing is that if you look at the real armies, they usually have 7 people in a unit which is called the decimal unit, and 100. The unit in an army which is supposed to be 100 people. It has only 50, 7 times 7. So yeah, this is not a very scientific answer to your question, but there's no science of hierarchy yet.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's interesting that our university has actually 7 faculties.
Oh, yeah. I didn't know.
They reorganized, I think about 10 years ago, they had 14 and they reduced it to 7 just because of this reason that, they couldn't handle the communication anymore. So,
But as soon as you just said, that if you have to handle 10,000 people, you can do it, and you have this 7 times 7 times 7, the hierarchy is there. It has to come into picture.
Yeah. I think last question, Brian, are you still around? Brian Dermody? Yeah.
Yep, still here. Thanks very much for a fascinating talk. I guess my question's quite similar to Hong Tong's actually. So I was wondering under what conditions hierarchy is selected evolutionarily, because you mentioned in the beginning that for certain organisms it doesn't seem to be selected, and then for others it is. And I was looking at this example you gave of the pigeons heading for a specific target, and it seemed there that makes sense, at least qualitatively, that you would have some kind of leader with knowledge. Whilst we did a study looking at vultures looking for carcasses in a more of a homogeneous environment, and the carcasses appear ephemerally, so there's no prediction about where and when they'll appear. And there we found that the optimal strategy didn't require hierarchy. So I wonder, like this whole idea of the goal, is it maybe that if there's a well understood goal, or a common, if the goal is clearly identified, maybe that gives rise to this hierarchy, perhaps.
Yes. We built a model, also a computational model, and the goal was to find a given position in space. But vultures, don't they explore? Don't they? It's a completely different context.
Yeah, that's the point. So the goal is very different. It's very unpredictable about where their food resources will arise. So as a result, we didn't see any hierarchy in that system, but maybe in a system where you have a more defined goal, you can see perhaps hierarchy arising.
I think this is a very good point, and indeed we also modeled at some point this exploratory behavior, and if the evolution drives them to survive as many of them as possible. So there is a collaboration among those, but in that case it's not hierarchical. But in our model, it was a computational model. If one of them found something, and the signal was as such that everyone got the signal that there is food here, and everyone went there, the overall consumption rate was much lower, because everyone was connected, eating only at one point, instead of simultaneously trying to consume food at different points in space. It was not as efficient. If they didn't give any signal to anyone else, it was also not as efficient, because the information that there is food here is something extra. So it turned out that there was an optimal distance within which if they listened to the rest and moved over there, the consumption rate was optimal. So evolution, evolution was at work, and there was a collective behavior, but it was not hierarchical. Yes, yes, that's a good point. It's not always there. I don't claim hierarchies always, but yeah, it depends on the goal. Yeah, task.
Yeah. Very good.
Okay, well, thank you very much. I think we should stop also. I see also people disappearing, so it's good to conclude. Well, thank you again very much. This very motivating talk. I hope also that it will stimulate research by young people in this on this topic, right, of hierarchy. And, we try to stimulate it also in our center, and this talk fitted really nicely in it. So again, thank you very much.
Thank you very much
for giving the talk.
If you are in Budapest, please visit.
Yeah. So for the people who are still around, I mean, the next lecture will be on January 21 by Shlomo Havlin from Tel Aviv, Bar-Ilan University, on scaling. And well, I wish you all happy holidays.
Please give pass on my greetings to Shlomo.
Okay, I will do that.
Yes. A friend of mine.
Yeah.
I'm happy he's also active and gives talks at your place.
Yeah, he's still very active. It's nice that he also sort of committed to giving a talk in this series.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you very much again, and bye everyone.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.